We have cash in the bank. We have a great asset in a secure Tier 1 jurisdiction, and we have 2 drills operating right now and a PA soon to be delivered. We've set ourselves up to continue being very relevant as an advanced gold project junior explorer with a pipeline of interesting news flow stepping into 2023.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another presentation on the Online Investment Conference. My name is Peter Norman, founder of the Online Investment Conference, and our goal at the OIC is to provide you, the investor, with investment ideas worth watching. Today's investment idea is Cartier Resources, listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol ECR. Our presenter is Philippe Cloutier, President and CEO of Cartier. Philippe, welcome once again.
Hello, Peter.
Philippe, the 25,000-meter drill program is underway at the Chimo Mine Project. A couple of months ago, you issued a press release that increased resources of the Chimo Mine Project to 720,000 ounces indicated and 1.6 million inferred. You've just raised 4.2 million in flow-through funds, which of course are earmarked for exploration. You're obviously getting to work on exploring the potential of the massive increase in your land holdings created by the acquisition of the East Cadillac property. You're here with another update to your corporate presentation. So let's get into it.
Well, thank you, Peter. So indeed, I'll just run through some general corporate highlights and then dive right into our flagship property, the Chimo Mine Project, and what we've been doing, what we've accomplished, and where we're going with this. Our share structure right now, we've got 2 senior companies that hold just under 30% of our stock. The Quebec Sovereign Fund's 4%, management and board just under 3%. Long-term retail, long-term shareholders, by that I mean people that have been around with us for at least 15 years that own 22%, and a free float of about 40%. We've got $8 million in the bank with our shares outstanding. That gives us a market cap of $28.3 million. Add that, that's 36.3 enterprise value. And I aim to show you that we are not trading at a share price that reflects the value that we've created at Chimo Mine. We have an experienced management team, myself, Guitan, and Rana, technical people, Nancy, our chief financial officer. On the ESG front, we're in the process of obtaining our Ecoloco certification. We've signed 2 mineral exploration agreements with the Cree First Nation of Waswanipi, and obviously we're committed to board diversity and succession. Where we operate and what we do, well, we've got 2 groups of properties, a group up here in what we call the Windfall Emerging Mining District, and obviously our flagship, the Chimo Mine property, which is situated along the prolific Cadillac Fault. All of our projects have well-defined deposits on them with characteristics to generate large tonnages at constant grade. And we've obviously selected them so that they're near infrastructure and qualified workforce. And more so, our flagship project, the Chimo Mine Project, we're focusing 100% of our energies on that. We've produced internal engineering studies that I'll allude to, and we've recently consolidated with the East Cadillac project of O3 Mining. We've delivered an updated resource estimate in doing so, and our PA is in progress. And as you mentioned, we've got a 25,000-meter diamond drill program currently underway with 2 machines. So by merging earlier on this year with the East Cadillac project of O3 Mining, we actually positioned ourselves with over 40 kilometers of the Cadillac break, as you can see here. It's a very sizable land position, the likes of ground that you would have from Val d'Or to Canadian Malartic, where there are a dozen mines and maybe tens of millions of ounces that have been produced, and there are currently many operations and mills there. So there's no reason that we cannot repeat that geological and prospective success along our patch of ground. And obviously, we're off to a great start with the Chimo Mine Project. By consolidating with the O3 ground, we've eliminated the boundaries. we've immediately increased the resource base and potential to find new ounces. And I believe that that large land position increases the flexibility and the strength of the project economics to favor ultimately its development. The moving forward catalyst, obviously, well, we've designed a drill program to increase the resources. We're also evaluating the potential for other type of gold mineralization along the fault. We are working on delivering a PEA early in 2023, and I believe all of that will enhance the capital markets profile and exposure of our story, so stay tuned. For now, I'm going to dive even closer into the project on the next slide over here. So there's the consolidated ground. Immediately after consolidating, we had a 43-101. They had a 43-101. Since this is now 100% Cartier, we did a 43-101 on the Chimo Mine Project and the West Nordo deposit. We now have 720,000 ounces in the indicated category and 1.6 million ounces in the inferred category. Ahead of that, we did some public and internal engineering studies. We had a shaft haulage capacity. We were working on stope design and sequencing that is being modified to accommodate with the presence of the West Nordo deposit. But more importantly, and something that was largely ignored, was our 2 ore sorting studies, where mineralized material that is found at Chimo is amenable to ore sorting, which means that 50% of that material can be pre-concentrated. And so you don't have to transport and crush and treat 50% of the material that you'll be mining. And ultimately, you increase the grade by 170%. Again, I'd like to attract your attention to the fact that we have a huge land position. Obviously, we're going to focus closer to where we can generate a lot of value, but ultimately in the ensuing years, we can continue developing this. So what I'm going to do now is basically, before I go and focus on the property, I'll just mention very rapidly the resource base. And this is what you have to focus on. The 25 million tons of ore that is 3.14 grams per ton in the indicated category and 2.75 grams per ton in the inferred. And as I mentioned, with the ore sorting, you can essentially bump that up to 5-ish grams per ton. So it's something that we're working on in the PEA. Closer to the Chimo Mine infrastructures, you can see the Cadillac Fault here, historically where a lot of the exploration diamond drilling was conducted. And you can also see a northern splay fault over here. And you can see these numerous drill indicated showings along the northern fault, and obviously the Chimo Mine mineralization along the Cadillac Fault, the West Nordo, the East Nordo. And I've left the property boundaries, the historical property boundaries here, just to show the effects of these boundaries, and that there was a lack of drilling linking up the West Nordo to Chimo and likewise up to Chimo West. And note that the mineralization actually plunges steeply north-northwest. So the northern property boundary was also, by eliminating that, gives us, the mineralization actually plunges to the north as well. The next slide I'll actually illustrate is this section here, which we call the Chimo Mine Gold System, and we'll be looking at that. It's a vertical slice, and we'll be looking at that from south to north. So here's the Chimo Mine Gold System. We've drilled it down locally up to 1.6 kilometers over a strike length of 3.7 kilometers. I want to walk you through this slide. Some of the key points here. This is a past producing gold mine. So there is the underground infrastructure, a shaft going down to 920 meters, the underground drifts. And historically, this mine produced just under 400,000 ounces of gold. And as you've seen recently, Cartier did produce 720,000 ounces of gold in the indicated category and 1.63 million ounces gold in the inferred category. So this system is alive and well. That's 5 times the historical production at Chimo, and we're quite proud about that. So we've decided to continue drilling in order to expand the width of the East Chimo Mine lens that is shown down here, and also drill the West Nordo area. So we have a drill operating here right now and a drill operating here right now as of early November. We've recently produced this diamond drill intersection. I'd like to point out that it is on the number 3 gold structure, which is slightly behind, a few tens of meters behind this number 5N zone. And that's being recognized here, subsurface. It was also recognized in moderate depths, and now we're seeing it down here. So eventually this will connect on the number 3 structure. And so when you flip this, you actually have a wider mineralized system at these various vertical depths. And therefore, we anticipate generating more ounces per vertical meter because of this new discovery. That's 9.9 grams per ton over a meter, and we're seeing it, the system and the vein set is still mineralized over widths of up to 6 meters. In this area here, we drilled 9.6 grams per ton over a meter in the 5N zone, so precisely on this long section. And that again is included within a section that graded the grades of the resource estimate, which is 3.3 grams per ton over 4 meters. So you can see that eventually, once we receive all the assays, we're going to be able to fold that into a new resource estimate. Eventually, that will contribute to the PEA. Then we've also planned another option to keep drilling at depth the system that we know is alive and well. Just to give you an idea, one of these machines this winter is going to go drill over here and over here. So a lot of news flow stemming from the diamond drilling that is in progress. Some of that will be included in another resource estimate. And then eventually the PEA that is due for early 2023 will obviously have to be upgraded at some point as well. So what we've shown our investors from 2016 onwards is that this project continues to grow. We produced a first resource estimate, just under 1 million ounces, a second resource estimate of 1.2 million ounces combined, inferred and indicated, then a third resource estimate. Most recently, because we acquired the East Cadillac property with the West Nordal deposit, we also increased the resource base. And with the drilling that is ongoing, we aim to yet again increase the total ounce of resources in and around and proximal to the underground infrastructures that are present at the Chimo Mine past producing operations. Our target is essentially about 3 million ounces. The drill program right now is focused on drilling the extension of known zones laterally and at depth, upgrading the resource estimate with the new drill results. Obviously, we're pursuing the engineering studies and we should deliver PEA early 2023. And then ultimately, that should provide ample news flow going into 2023. I want to leave you with this. This is gold mineralization underground at Chimo. Obviously, it's high-grade, visible gold. It accounts for about 25% of the ore that's at the Chimo, past-producing Chimo mine. We currently see that in some of the drill holes, and we're hoping that this adventure will continue. Thank you very much.
Philippe, super presentation as always. Let's take a few questions now. The inclusion of the East Cadillac property from O3 Mining provided you with a huge landholding, now called the Chimo Mine Project, to explore and develop. What do you know about this landholding that you want to capitalize on in the future? And secondly, what do you not know about this landholding that you want to learn more about?
What I do know right now is this. We have a long-lived system that is quite well developed on the Cadillac Fault that has been identified through historic drilling that dates back to the late 60s. So over a 50, 60-year period, people have come and gone and drilled and delineated various deposits and drill-indicated gold showings, not only on the Cadillac Fault, but on this northern splay as well. And that is shown with a bunch of diamond drill hole intersections that are locally quite high grade. Obviously, the benefit that we have here is that the Chimo mine itself was in production in the 60s, in the 80s, and then in the 90s. It was a smallish operation, produced just under 400,000 ounces of gold, and it did shut down in 1997, not for lack of ore, as we've demonstrated, but because of difficult economic times. For the very first time in its 90-year history, because staking dates back to 1943, this land package has come under the ownership of one single junior explorer, namely Cartier. And there's no reason for this land package that sits along the Cadillac Fault to produce the number of mines that we're seeing, for instance, between Val d'Or and Canadian Malartic, or the Malartic town. So I think that our next work obviously is going to focus on the Chimo mine, but I also think that in the coming years, with additional funding, we'll be able to discover very nice new showings and deposits that will help grow the ounce count at Chimo.
Given the size of your new land holding, have you given any thought to severing off a portion and giving it to another company for development, like what you did with Hawk Moon and the Wilson property? Or is it too early for such thinking?
I would think it's too early for that type of thinking right now because we've just assembled this land package. And so part of the program while we're drilling is assessing the showings and the deposits east and along strike. Obviously, we're focused right now drilling this immediate part of the land package, but we do know that there are gold showings strewn along this fall to the east and also to the west. So I think it's too early to consider farming parts of this out. And so it'll be another year before we start thinking along those lines.
What are the specific activities your team is focusing on over the rest of the fall and into the winter?
Well, obviously, drilling here and here, providing a preliminary economic assessment for the mineralization that is shown here, developing drill programs for these other known mineralized centers that we have here along a strike and to the north of Chimo, and then eventually deciding how we're going to tackle the next phases of the project. Obviously, we're going to have to upgrade the PEA because by the time we produce the first PEA, we're still going to be receiving results from the ongoing drilling. We're going to have to update that yet again. And then what do we do from that? This is on the path to production process. So likely we're going to come back and drill this deposit, do some infill drilling, bring it to feasibility stage, so on and so forth.
You've had a long career in mining. Cartier, as you say, is now on a path to production process. And while your career experience has been primarily concerned with exploration, working towards a production situation must be exciting, but at the same time challenging for you. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, it is challenging because the situation right now in the Abitibi and in a lot of mining jurisdictions is that the senior mining companies are merging amongst themselves. And what we've seen is they're buying situations that are already in production. The message is clear. When you have a project such as Chimo, you have to keep de-risking it and coming up with a solution to bring it to their attention and or develop it yourself. So that's the reason every step and every move that we make on a project like this has to be in line with eventually this becoming a mining operation. And making the decisions and designing the exploration and doing the work required to bring it to that level. And, the challenge is finding people that will help us along the way. Fortunately, when you got a good project, it attracts that type of people.
Stock prices for a lot of juniors have been hammered over the past year. For example, we saw Pure Gold stop production entirely recently. You've got $8 million in the bank, so you can ride out any storm for the foreseeable future. Are there opportunities opening up in terms of equipment and talent availability because of the turmoil and negative events we've been seeing?
Yes, right now, because of the inflationary headwinds and the terrible markets, we've seen some competitors actually shut down their diamond drill programs. So we're seeing more drills come back to the shops and available for our purposes. More drillers, the labs are freeing up. What's not freeing up is the consultant world. Their pipeline of attention is focused on producing resource estimates and getting technical reports out. So that hasn't changed. What's really important is when you have a project such as Chimo and you have cash in the bank and you know that your project can continue to advance, well, that's what you have to be working on. And the real challenge is weathering the storm and making sure that when the market does pick up, you've positioned your asset, your story, and your project to be top of the pile and make sure that the market is aware of what you've been up to.
You got a lean, focused team that you've been working with for a number of years. You've got a large challenge ahead of you. Are you going to have to boost that team? And if so, how will that happen?
Our approach to that is to keep the same team for now. Owing to our financial capacity and the money that we have, we're able to continue advancing it with 2 drills, complete the PEA with the smallest team that we have on high performance and continue working, whereas others are shutting down their activities. So that's one thing. Growing a team right now would not be wise because it would simply burn more cash more rapidly And we've not seen the markets being able to appreciate that type of positive news flow. So we just keep advancing the project with the team, keeping a tight leash on our cash burn.
You've been through a lot of ups and downs in the gold cycle. The gold price is now around $1,765 per ounce, well below its high of 2063. What do you say to investors navigating through these times? Is this an opportunity or a problem?
It's an opportunity and a problem. The opportunity being that a lot of companies such as Cartier that have generated tremendous value with their work in the last 2 or 3 years, well, that value is not being recognized. So there are some great opportunities, and Cartier is one of them. Undervalued stories and value propositions. However, the challenge is applying the contrarian attitude and choosing the right one. I would like to say that you always pick a company that's in the right jurisdiction with the right team and the right, endowment in its jurisdiction. But one of the major challenges is the new economic ecosystem. I mean, the seniors are merging amongst each other, and they're signaling the juniors to do the same. You just have to make the right decisions to bring the company to a level where it can eventually reward their shareholders.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our live Q&A. If you haven't submitted a question yet or want to submit one later, you can always do so by emailing Philippe at philippe.cloutier@resourcescartier.com. That's philippe.cloutier@resourcescartier.com. Or give him a call at 819-874-1331. He loves talking to investors. And now, before we close out the presentation, I'm going to turn things over one more time to Philippe for some final remarks. Phil, as we always ask, perhaps you could begin your remarks by reviewing 3 things investors should remember about Cartier Resources.
We have cash in the bank. We have a great asset in a secure Tier 1 jurisdiction with proven endowment. And we have 2 drills operating right now and a PEA soon to be delivered. We've set ourselves up to continue being very relevant as an advanced gold project junior explorer in a Tier 1 jurisdiction with a pipeline of interesting news flow stepping into 2023. So I hope we'll be on your radar, and I believe we're a tremendous value proposition and investment opportunity.
Thank you, Philippe. Before we go, a reminder that today's presentation was from Cartier Resources, trading on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the ticker symbol ECR. Our presenter was Philippe Cloutier, President and CEO of Cartier. The drilling program on the Chimo Mine Project is well underway. There's money in the bank and a well-thought-out plan for putting that money to work. There's lots more news in the hopper, and we'll be back early in the new year to give you another update. You can learn about upcoming presentations at onlineinvestmentconference.com or by following us on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm Peter Norman, founder of the Online Investment Conference. Stay safe, be well, and until we meet again, bye-bye and au revoir.